All right. Good morning, everyone. If you haven't seen any of these trainings or recordings already, my name's Anna Holder. My pronouns are she, her. I work at the State Water Board's Office of Information Management and Analysis, and I'm our Open Data Science, Equity, and Tribal Coordinator. And today I'm going to be your training facilitator. I'm here to support our trainers, help with Q&A in the chat, that sort of thing. This is our fourth training in the series. Some of you in the room have been to many before. Some might be your first training. Welcome all. We're really glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about how our statewide surface water ambient monitoring program thinks about monitoring design for harmful algal blooms, sharing our methods and the resources that we use. And then we've got a guest speaker from another arm of SWAMP who's going to kind of introduce us into some data quality and data management concepts and principles and resources. And we're also going to hear, hopefully, a presentation from our colleague at the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians, who's going to share about their emerging program and how they what they monitor for, how they prepare, how they make their monitoring priority decisions, that sort of thing. So we're really looking forward to hearing from Zach later this morning. As you know, we are in Zoom, so we have blocks for questions and discussion after like each chunk of content. And so if you have a question that you want to ask, feel free, if you're comfortable, dropping it in the chat, or you can use your raise hand reaction and then unmute yourself. You can turn on your camera if you'd like. Zoom recordings, our format, it only captures the video of the person that's talking. So right now it's like the slide in my face and it doesn't capture anything else, if that matters to you. I don't see anyone on the phone, but if you are on the phone and you want to mute and unmute yourself, that's *6. If you want to raise your hand, that's *9. We are recording this so that we can post the recording after the training, but if you don't want your question recorded or you don't want the discussion recorded, please just let me know and we can pause the recording so we can have a robust and honest discussion. The priority is you folks in the call, so we want to make sure you're comfortable with sharing whatever you want to share, or if after you leave and you think, oh, I don't really want that question or my face or whatever that came up during the discussion to be shared publicly, let me know and we can remove it from the recording before it's posted. So we want to make sure y'all are comfortable with contributing in a way that feels good for you. Everyone's name in the participants list looks great, but if you want to rename yourself, there's some guidance at the top here on how to do that. Again, you've got that bar on the bottom for mute, unmute, your reactions to raise hand, or if you really like something someone said, you can give them a little party thing or a heart or whatever. What else? We're also going to kick things off, kind of warm ourselves up with a Zoom poll in a moment. And so what I'll do is I will launch the poll and then a box is going to pop up on your screen with, we've only got one question and that question will be on the slide. You'll select your response, you'll press submit, and then I will share the results. And so and talk through them because the recording doesn't show the box. So and it's just to get us warmed up. So today we're really thinking about monitoring design and data quality, and a lot of times that's captured in some type of document called something like a monitoring plan or a quality assurance project plan. And we're just curious what level of experience folks have with those types of documents. So it doesn't have to be a QAP necessarily, but just curious about how familiar folks are with either developing or reviewing environmental monitoring plans. And the options are no experience, which is great. We're glad you're here. We're here to help. Novice, you've reviewed a plan that was written by someone else. An advanced beginner, maybe you've written certain sections, but not the whole enchilada. And then the expert, you've written all parts of the plan. Awesome. I'll give another moment for folks. We've got a small but mighty team with us, group with us today. So we might not have a ton of respondents, and that's okay. Okay, great. Above 60% of us have participated, and I know a handful won't because they're with us on the Swampy Swamp team. All right. 75% of folks have participated, which is great. One more moment to press submit. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and we'll talk through the results together. So they should show up on your Zoom screens. Do they show up on your Zoom screens? Can you see them? Okay, great. I just assume that happens, so it's going to get confirmation. All right, so we've got a couple of folks that have no experience, a couple that have read existing plans, they're monitoring plan novices. Great. And then we've got a couple of experts in the room. Awesome. So we'd love to hear questions from everyone. And also if you've reviewed plans already, you're an expert, you've written plans, and you have, a different perspective to share, we'd love to hear that and get your expertise braided in with what we're sharing today too. So thanks for indulging us by completing that Zoom poll. And we will move on to today's instructors. So like I said, if you've been to these before, Carly and Marissa are your FHAB besties already. You've seen them, you've met them, you've heard from them in the last 3 trainings. Our colleague Tessa is going to be walking us through the data quality and data management section. And then our colleague Zach Gigon is with Shingle Springs, and he'll join us later to talk about his program. And as they join and do their own sections, they'll introduce themselves in a way that's probably better than what I just said. So I welcome instructors to do that if you'd like. Okay, I think at this point I am passing it on to Marissa and Carly, and we're, as usual, playing the next slide game. So you let me know when you're ready. I'll try and read your mind a little bit and advance for you, but otherwise, take it away.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. My name is Carly Nelson, and as Anna said, I work in the Freshwater Estuarine Harmful Algal Bloom Program at the State Water Resources Control Board. You're going to hear us say that a lot, so it's called FHAB for short, but we're mostly focusing on those harmful algal blooms in those inland water bodies. So I'm going to just give a real quick recap from the last trainings to help frame things for the content today. Next slide. So just want to take a minute to orient folks to what we've already covered with the tribal training series. In course 1, we provided an overview of cyanobacteria and harmful algal blooms, as well as exposure pathways, and an introduction to our water board's freshwater and estuarine harmful algal bloom program, which we work within. And we also heard from the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians regarding their harmful algal bloom, or HAB program for short. In course 2, we went over our voluntary HAB response guidance we follow, and the corresponding advisory signs and recommendations. And we also heard from the Yurok tribe about their HAB monitoring program. And then in course 3, we went into some details as to cyanobacterial toxins and the health impacts, as well as how our state actually investigates and tracks HAB-associated illnesses reported to us. Just giving you a quick recap, but I definitely invite you to revisit these presentations. They're all posted on our webpage. We have the recordings up there. as well as the slides are available as downloadable PDFs that have a lot of really great hyperlinks for you as resources as well. Next slide. So in this training series, we're focused on harmful algal blooms that occur specifically in California freshwater and estuarine environments. For those of you who haven't attended our past trainings, and as a reminder, the types of blooms we're focusing on are from cyanobacteria. So these harmful algal blooms, or HABs for short, have impacts to the people and the environment. They can change the physical conditions of a water body and the way it functions. This can negatively impact other organisms, such as changing the food web dynamics. And it can also cause dissolved oxygen levels to drop pretty quickly, which we often see with like those massive fish die-offs. And a HAB can also degrade the aesthetics of a water body and make it unappealing to the visual eye. If you look at the slide in front of you, the lower left-hand corner has some pretty fun-looking water that I don't think anyone would want to drink. And it can produce taste and odor compounds, so the water tastes pretty terrible to drink, as well as if you're around a water body that has an active HAB, it can have a pretty distinctive sewage smell or dying dead animal smell, as well as those HABs can produce toxins. And so taken together, these impacts degrade a variety of our beneficial uses, ranging from recreation, right? You don't want to swim in that water. Drinking water, you don't want to drink it. Tribal uses, subsistence fishing, because the fish can actually take up those toxins, as well as impacting aquatic life. So just kind of orienting us that HABs aren't just a water quality concern, it's also a health concern for us across the state. And for those of you who want to kind of revisit some of that content, we went over all of this in pretty extensive detail in course 1, so go back and check that out. Next slide. So I also just want to give a quick recap as to our statewide guidance for response to cyanobacterial harmful algal blooms in recreational waters. This guidance was developed by the California Cyanobacteria Harmful Algal Bloom Network with very heavy-handed coordination and help with tribal aspects and in terms of them helping us design what that framework looks like. And it has been implemented since 2016 by the water boards. It's an 8-step response process, which is highlighted here on the left-hand side of the slide. And it was really developed to be protective of public health. And a majority of these steps are informed by an effective monitoring design, which we're going to go into some details about today. So I just want to briefly go over different types of monitoring for HABs and also the resources available to you, so you all are better equipped on what to monitor for and what that data can tell you. So you might be wondering, well, some of you might not be wondering, but for those of you who are, why do you monitor for HABs? The most popular purposes often include public health or responding to an event to better understand the water quality and the drivers, and then as well as maybe to inform any water policy to be more protective of that water. And if you want more information on this voluntary response guidance, this 8-step process, we went over that in a lot of detail in course 2. So you can go back and revisit that. Next slide. So before we move on, I just want to highlight that not all HABs have the same characteristics. So this should really be considered when you're developing a monitoring design. We have 2 types of HABs that we experience in California. We have the free-floating planktonic blooms that you often see in lakes and reservoirs. They're more obvious as they make the water discolored, so they can look like spilled paint. They often have a green color, and they are buoyant, so they can move with the current and the wind. So you often find them on the windward side of a bay, and they also tend to rise up during the sunniest part of the day because they're photosynthetic. So you'll find them towards the top of the water surface during the middle of the day. And then they also tend to concentrate in stagnant water areas. Benthic HABs, on the other hand, they cover the stream or river bottom, but they can exist in lakes, so I don't want to be exclusionary. And they're a bit more challenging to screen for as the water often appears clear. So they can often be really easily confused with filamentous green algae that also attach to rocks and on the stream bottoms. And realizing that it's challenging to actually understand and know what to look for in the field, we do offer visual guides for both as a training tool, and those are all available on our web pages. on our portal page, as well as we have a wiki, and we have links to all of this, I think, in the slide deck. And with both types of bloom growth, we can't visibly determine if cyanobacteria is producing toxins and at what potency. So oftentimes in a planktonic bloom, the water surrounding the bloom material, it's often floating particles and scum. That is the area that can have the elevated toxin concentrations. But for benthic blooms, the water surrounding the mats often have nearly undetectable toxins, as the toxins stay within the cell in the mat material. So I highlight this because different sampling methodology should be considered for both of these in your monitoring design, as well as just highlighting that toxin testing should be a consideration when developing a monitoring plan if your priority is protecting public health. Okay, so next slide. So now I'm going to dive into developing a monitoring plan for some of you. You might already be experts, but for those of you who are just diving in, this might be some helpful tools and things to consider. So before getting out in the field and collecting data information, it's really important to understand the why and develop your monitoring design to answer that question. So I'm going to go into some details as to how to develop a pretty solid plan. So monitoring plans are driven by the end goals, right? These can be objectives or questions that need to be answered. And as a starting point, gathering and reviewing existing information is the most cost-effective to inform these goals. You can also highlight gaps of information, which is also really helpful, and also learning what resources you already have to leverage. Then the monitoring design will address the where, what, and when, which are also essential, and narrowing down where to monitor at a high level, and then further refining locations. And just to highlight, the monitoring can cover the biological, chemical, and physical habitats of a water body or watershed. And during this process, you might find many documents and procedures that are already available to leverage. It'll also help you identify what pieces still need to be developed to help inform your monitoring design. So this is where you really start putting all the pieces together. And then during monitoring, multiple pieces of information are collected and collated. So it's really important to consider what systems you already have in place to store and analyze that information. This will help ensure that data is not lost and ensure there's good data quality. I just want to highlight the TETS. I'll go over the quality assurance part of this in much more detail later on in this presentation. Next slide. So this slide is just a good example of different questions to assess the general health of waterways. It was developed by our surface water ambient monitoring program here at the Water Boards. These assessment questions can be answered individually or together, and it's just a really great starting point when determining your overall goals and what your monitoring question is. And I just want to highlight that these questions expand beyond harmful algal blooms, but to other environmental concerns or questions. So this is just a larger, broader look. It's important also to note that monitoring and fieldwork is really time and resource intensive. So taking the time to invest in evaluating historical information is really valuable so that you can really direct your resources to areas of high interest or where you have those elevated water quality concerns. Next slide, thank you. So I just went over some brief general assessment questions, but to be more pointed as to monitoring questions surrounding HABs, I just want to direct you to our programmatic monitoring questions that we developed in 2021 as part of our like holistic California FHAB monitoring strategy. The strategy had input from local and national experts, and it really was meant to have like one broad strategy for the entire state of California. It's catered to look at the state as well as watershed scales and even individual waterways. So it's really a useful tool for just about anyone when developing your monitoring goals and questions and addressing harmful algal blooms. And there's a link, I think we have, oh yeah, there's a link on the slide to that as well. So it's all publicly accessible. The questions we centered around are status and trends, environmental drivers, incident response, prediction, and mitigation and prevention. So status and trends are really foundational to understand the current quality and how it's changed over time. Specifically for trends over time, we assess the how the elevated the problem is, the time frame this adverse change has occurred, and at what pace. And then altogether, this information helps inform how to prioritize efforts to address the issues that are impacting that water body. And in evaluating environmental drivers, this information can inform what efforts would be most effective to improve conditions at the waterway to reduce the HAB problem. So you're really looking at what's causing that growth. And I just want to highlight our program focuses primarily on the HAB incident response for protection of public health for Californians, as we're really the main agency who addresses HAB complaints that we receive from the public. So for us, for the HAB incident response and not having a clear understanding as to the where and the percentage of water bodies experiencing HABs, our program is able to redirect our limited resources to those areas of concern to ensure those public notifications occur at the statewide level. And then these latter questions on the slide usually come after you've answered the previous questions and have the data to assess. So here in the FHAB program, we're still working towards filling that data gap to help inform prediction models and robust data to inform appropriate mitigation and prevention measures. And we're also really trying to work on integrating other tools that we'll touch on later to help fill those gaps. If you have an interest on monitoring for mitigation and things of that nature, feel free to reach out to us because we do know of some different water body managers that have gone through that process of doing the monitoring to help inform mitigation measures that they've been able to implement on the ground. Next slide. So before starting a monitoring design, it's important to start doing some research, right? I talked about that earlier. So you really want to look at your historical data and looking into other places that might have relevant data. Previously collected data is a great starting point to learn baseline conditions, as well as looking at all the other tools available to help inform what information already exists for your area of interest. So the slide has a pretty comprehensive list of different resources. Some of these tools available include the SWAMP program data portals, satellite imagery that can remotely detect blooms, and several other dashboards that present many data sets that can be parsed or combined to assess spatially. I'm not going to go into these in detail at the moment, but Marissa will be walking you through a lot of these resources in the next segment. Next slide. Okay, so just highlighting that monitoring can be very resource intensive. So just to consider leveraging available funding opportunities. The slide's just here to really provide a list of opportunities that we're aware of, and many are prioritized specific to water monitoring and for tribal recipients. I want to highlight this list is not comprehensive, so if we're missing anything, please let us know and we can add this as a resource because we really want to keep building the resource library we have for folks for funding opportunities. Next slide. So I've discussed the monitoring questions and goals, touched on the resources for evaluating potential historical data, and the funding opportunities to implement monitoring plans. But now let's kind of segue a little bit more to the different types of HAB monitoring and what they can inform. So our FHAB program, we distinguish these different types of monitoring by resource intensity, both field staff, and then the associated analyses costs. And we focus primarily on event response, as I said before, and it's primarily because it's the lowest resource intensity, and it can be expanded to a larger spatial scale. And considering California is such a massive state, that's how we've had to sort of design our program. So monitoring is basically just triggered after a HAB event is reported and or confirmed. So it's very reactive monitoring, right? Like we're not seeing how conditions change and when that bloom starts forming. It's after it's already there, and then we're going out and determining the toxin concentrations and the associated public health recommendations. The next type of monitoring is routine monitoring, which provides the opportunity to better characterize when a bloom develops and the duration of the HAB. It's often associated with individual water body monitoring. You can also start to better understand the environmental context of when the bloom begins. So maybe start looking at some of those environmental drivers and really start to evaluate that status and trends when the severity peaks. And this may help inform when to organize events around poor conditions to prevent unnecessary exposure to HABs, and or can actually help inform future monitoring efforts for that water body, right? Because you're going to start to learn kind of how things start happening, like when the bloom generally starts to form. So you might be able to shorten that monitoring window to really focus on when you expect that HAB to happen. And then the last type of monitoring is ambient monitoring. And this is the most resource intensive, but it often affords the opportunity to learn more about the other environmental stressors or water quality impacts to a water body. So this data can inform future efforts to better manage a water body and identify areas to reduce drivers that promote HABs. Often ambient monitoring spans beyond just a single water body and a single analyte. So usually you're collecting a lot more environmental data, and it really helps you better assess the overall watershed health and can inform comprehensive strategies to make improvements to at-risk or degraded areas or protect areas of high quality waters. Next slide. So implementing any type of monitoring plan, you need to really determine what monitoring collection analyses make the most sense for your monitoring goals. Once again, circling back to the resources available, because that's often the highest point of concern, this should be considered. On this line, we've outlined low to high resource intensity for monitoring collection and analyses specific to HABs. So the low resource end can be anything from visual monitoring with the naked eye, right? Like going out using your visual guide, seeing what you see on the ground and taking data points for that, and collecting it, and then obviously reporting it, as well as qualitative tests. Some of those could be a jar and stick test where you're using a stick or a jar to confirm that it's not filamentous algae, or even in some cases, field microscopic ID, right? So you can at least then determine if there's cyanobacteria presence or absence if you have some training. And then analyses can be performed, but there's associated costs. So for that medium resource, you can start diving into more of those analyses, and you can do DNA testing to determine potential toxicity by measuring genes present for different cyanobacteria to then determine if you want to do some toxin testing. The most resource intensive is toxin testing to quantify toxins present in the water. So this is where you can actually learn as to the concentrations of toxins and what types. I just want to highlight that a lot of the laboratories that perform this toxin testing also provide a service of laboratory microscopic ID. So you can send that sample in and they'll actually ID and usually can tell you down to the genera of what cyanobacteria is present. So then you can start making those correlates of the cyanobacteria you have and the type of toxin production that you're having in that watershed. Next slide. So I've mentioned resources being a major component when designing your monitoring plan. And so this includes the field time, the personnel, and the equipment. So the questions are your staff trained? How many field personnel do you need? Do you have all the equipment, or do you need to acquire additional equipment to meet your goals? And these are all just really important things to consider as you develop your monitoring plan. I do want to highlight these logistics often become the most important and often become the largest hurdles when actually implementing it. So having considering all of this at the beginning and having a plan for all of these is really, really helpful to make sure that you're successful when you actually go to implement your monitoring plan. Next slide. So I framed the aspects of a monitoring design, but now let's dive into the individual elements. So first you need to identify where you want to sample, right? So often this is informed by doing some of that historical water quality concern investigation, or if you're have an initial or you just want to like dive in and like see what the actual quality of the water is because no one's actually evaluated if there is any impairments, right? If there's any pollutants or concerns. So in reviewing that can include desktop reconnaissance. So you're reviewing the historical data and their associated sampling locations. You might contact the water body managers for additional context. And you're really just trying to garner a better understanding of the uses of that water body. And then all of this together will assist you when you get out in the field and you investigate the location. So you're more aware of hazards and access points, as well as maybe already like plausible sampling locations you want to investigate further. Next slide. So we've done all of this desktop research and maybe some communications with folks that maybe have a little bit more knowledge base on the water body or watershed of interest. So now you're ready to get in the field and identify your monitoring sites. I want to highlight the FHAB program has a site reconnaissance guide as a resource. Once again, it's publicly available. But the intent of this whole site reconnaissance process is really to ensure that you can do repeat visits by different field personnel by documenting the site characteristics, right? So you're taking some of that initial data to help identify the monitoring plan goals, right, of the sites where you're going, and making sure that this is all documented so any individual from your group can go out and do the monitoring and knows exactly what you're talking about. And once again, this is really important for overall data management to ensure continued data quality over time and across seasons. Next slide. So I just want to highlight when doing site reconnaissance, it's actually a really great opportunity to allow to do some visual assessments for HABs as well to help you further hone down and identify the areas of HAB accumulations that might inform where you define your sampling sites. I'm a huge fan of opportunistic field collection data because oftentimes that's the hardest part is getting people out in the field. So if folks are getting out there, just maybe having a field data sheet where folks can identify some of their visual assessments, that's great. It might not add to your greater monitoring plan, but this ancillary data might inform future monitoring efforts. And just reiterating, having eyes on the ground is valuable to detect HABs. And also it can be for public messaging, right? To you can tell folks that there is a HAB present. And then this data can also be used to evaluate long-term status and trends. So once again, just putting in a plug for good data management to ensure that data is not lost. Next slide. So going back to the monitoring plan design, I just want to recap the key elements to ensure the monitoring elements will form the goals or questions. It's just really important to have all of this documented, right? So when you're just like in your initial design phase, when you're identifying your questions and your objectives, you really want to write it all down so you can reference it to ensure that your monitoring design is informing your monitoring purpose and objective. It's really easy to get scope creep, so it's really valuable to have all of this documented out of the gates. Next slide. And then the second component is how to use your data and ensure you're confident regarding the quality, right? So having the processes identified to ensure quality promotes confidence in the data, consistency in data collection and storage, and uniformity during the duration of the project or program. And having uniform data input really streamlines data analysis processes, which can often turn complex. So it really allows that data set to be used both for yourself and maybe in combination with other data sets to better inform monitoring questions. Just want to highlight again, our colleague Tessa will be giving you much more robust information on quality assurance project plans coming up shortly. So I'm going to keep from going into too much detail. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Marissa.
Yeah, thanks, Carly. So, hello, folks. I'm Marissa Van Dyke. I'm a senior environmental scientist at the State Water Boards. Along with Carly and Anna, we work closely together, and just wanted to extend a thank you to everyone listening here today. We appreciate your attendance, and now that you've met us, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions or any one-to-one chats, particularly about these data sources that we're going to go over and design options. All right, so next slide. Carly briefly brought up the different data resources out there to help inform monitoring questions and also your design for monitoring plans. So in this section, I'm going to take some time to go over those available resources and help orient you so you know what information you can pull from them. So much of these slides are designed as reference cards to guide you in your future use of the tools. So they have a lot of helpful instructions on the functionality and navigation of these web-based tools. Notably, here on the left-hand side, we have a list of resources that are remote sensing tools, which provide information from satellite imagery. While these data are really valuable, lots of folks use these tools, I want to highlight that they don't replace on-the-ground monitoring, rather it's complementary to it. And further, on the right-hand side, we have a few additional tools that we'll go over as well, specific for California areas, and some more national tools that have some California-specific data. All right, next. So the tools that we are presenting, particularly starting off the first two, are based off of satellite imagery. So I'm just going to kind of dive into that a little bit more before we go into the tool specifically. So satellite imagery is collected by orbital satellites, and these are tasked to evaluate HAB conditions across the state. You're probably wondering why this data is so valuable. So satellites are able to essentially take pictures of the entire waterway nearly every day. This is a task that's nearly impossible for us to do on the ground, going site by site around an entire lake and then moving on to another lake. And so for those of you that are a little less familiar with the satellites, imagery, specifically the data collected for evaluating HABs, let me provide a little quick overview. So the satellites, when they circle the Earth, they have onboard sensors to record the color reflectance from the water surface. So essentially, they're taking a lot of pictures of the lakes. And with these pictures and the sensors that are on board, they can detect different pigments in the water, particularly chlorophyll A, pigments that's found in all green plants, and this particularly the green organisms in the water, including algae and cyanobacteria. And then the sensors can also distinguish between another pigment called phycocyanin, and that's found exclusively in cyanobacteria. So that's how they're differentiating there. And then this data that's available from the satellites is processed and provided in public repositories or web-based tools to use as necessary. So the satellite tools that we're going to go over are two that the FHAB program uses and we developed as well. And we routinely use this data from those public repositories on a daily basis. And that data is provided by satellites called Sentinel-3. And they have more than one satellite that does flyovers at 1-day intervals, gathering us near real-time data. That's why it's really valuable for sensing HABs. Next. All right, so the first tool we're going to go into is the satellite mapping tool. And this is something that we've had live for a number of years. This helps us screen for cyanobacteria blooms in nearly 300 of the largest lakes and reservoirs and some wide channels in the San Francisco Bay Delta and some large lagoons as well. So due to the resolution of what the satellites can pick up, particularly these Sentinel-3 satellites, they're unable to screen for the smaller lakes, hence our tools being carried here to these larger lakes. And this tools are really great to help identify areas of potential HAB concerns and then where to prioritize field verification in your monitoring plans. In the image here on the right, I'm just going to take a moment and walk you through a little bit what you're seeing here. This is an example of the satellite imagery for a large lake, and the coloration is depicted in square shapes that are really close together. And you might be wondering what these are, and these are squares, and these squares are called pixels. And we use that term often, so I'm going to help orient us to what we're meaning when we speak to pixels. When the satellite goes over and collects data, it's measuring a geographic unit called the pixels. And these pixels represent a specific area with one color at a time, and then they're closely aligned next to each other and gives you this patchwork of coloration. And the edges of the lakes here, or on the edge of the lake, you can see a dark ring. This is because these areas are excluded so the land can't cause issues. For this reason, the technology doesn't have the resolution to detect nearshore blooms. Often, blooms concentrate in these stagnant waters or are pushed from the wind and current, as Carly had mentioned. So the satellite imagery is not necessarily going to show a bloom that can be easily viewed from the beach or shoreline, but it's going to be showing these bloom detections when they're occurring in open water with this technology, which is very valuable. And then I'm just going to go into the functionality of this tool in a minute. And I want to highlight that these tools, they can tell us when a bloom is present, so the density, the magnitude of that bloom, but doesn't necessarily capture the corresponding toxicity. So this is something that we need to collect a sample for and measure the toxins in the water. Next. All right, so when you first open the tool, you'll see a gray map of California. This is a snapshot of what you'll see, and it's just overlaid right now with a lot of navigation. And when you open it, it's going to default to the current conditions of the lakes and show you a full set of the whole California state. And based on the bloom density, the coloring will range from cool colors, so the lowest density, into warmer colors with red and the warm colors signifying the most severe blooms, highlighted here on that legend and that color ramp. As you navigate, you're going to change the base map on the top left-hand corner, and you can change different overlays to help you understand where you're looking at, including adding county borders and even a street map as well to help with navigation on the ground. And most importantly, you can change what data is represented on the map. So you can focus on the cyanobacteria index, which is called CI for short, and that's based on that pigment associated just with cyanobacteria. And then you can change it to chlorophyll A, which is indicator of that total concentration of all plants and algae in the water. We often see cyanobacteria blooms begin to form when chlorophyll levels rise. So it's really complementary data set to view the chlorophyll data separately to inform where potential cyanobacteria blooms may be occurring a little later. And then you can use the different timeframes on the map choices to view the data each day as it's available, so 1-day data, or you can look at it as a 7-day composite. Each day, each set of the data, it presents the maximum concentration that's detected per pixel, meaning that's the maximum value each day for that whole span of the waterway that's presented here. And for the satellite imagery tools that we're presenting with its technology, it's depicting a pixel that covers an area of 300 meters square. So that's a pretty large area when on the ground when you're viewing that 300-meter square area. And oftentimes we're looking at this 7 or 10-day composites, and that's really useful for when there's a single day or multiple days with cloud cover that may skew the data so that then you can understand a little bit more about what's going on outside of that cloud cover. There's also multiple drop downs in the upper right that are intended to provide some more information and also instructions. So we encourage you to explore those options if you're interested. And continuing with these drop downs, the next slide, most importantly, you're going to want to search for the water body of interest. So there you can go to the search field and type in your waterway that you'd like to see and click on that. Or you can also zoom into the area, the map, where you know your waterway is, and just use that method as a way to double check to see if there's any satellite imagery for that waterway. Next. This is an example of when you've identified your waterway from the search field. You can then click on that and view on select view satellite data. Once you click on that, the screen will change with zooming in on an individual waterway that you just selected and have all of the satellite imagery summarized on the right-hand side. Next. All right, so now comes all the information to explore. And the system defaults to always present the most recent data for that lake, likely the prior day to when you're viewing, or it could be the same day if you're viewing it a little later in the day. And the Welcome tab provides additional tools to understand the data that's being presented, as well as some helpful links and associated mapping tools, including checking out if there's any advisories for that waterway. Next. All right. So on the upper right-hand side, this is all this data set, and there's a very prominent timeline at the top. This timeline provides the remotely sensed data for the water body all the way back to 2003 to the current time. And there's these dark areas on there that's depicting the magnitude or like the intensity of the bloom conditions that can be viewed over time. So it's something that you can scroll through using the scroll bar, or you can use the toggle feature. And then further to look at the time frames, it defaults to 30-day time frame, but you can also change it to 10-day if you want to see a little narrower time frame. Now, as you move the timeline options, the information below and that map will update as well. So moving down to the tabs, we're highlighting here the individual graphs tab next to the welcome. And you can look at the graphs here to show the cyanobacteria index, which is identified as CI, or separately, you can look at the chlorophyll A graphics. You can then also change the time frame of the data that you're looking at. So you can change to the 1-day or the 7-day using those drop downs. And once you figure out what data you want to look at, again, it's going to be updating as you select your options. And there's always a download option as well to download the information that you selected if you want to save what you're looking at. And the map on the left and the graphics right here are a little bit covered up, but I'll go over that in a moment. And when you look at the map of this lake, this is Mystic Lake, the coloration is very warm. There's a high magnitude of bloom occurring here and matches that coloration that's in the left-hand side in that legend. Okay, so next I'm going to go into those graphics that are covered up from these drop downs and walk you through those aspects of it. Okay, so now that you've selected what time frame you want to look at, the top, there's these two graphs that are presented, and the top one will show the cyanobacteria index or the chlorophyll, and then below will be the pixel count. And for this example, we're looking at the cyanobacteria index, and you can confirm that by looking at the left-hand side of the graph. It says modified cyanobacteria index along that vertical axis. And in that graph, there's a red dotted line that spans across it. And this represents the recreational alert threshold when a HAB is likely present. And as mentioned, we highly recommend doing field verification to confirm when a bloom is above this benchmark threshold. And here you can also see above the threshold, there's multiple colored lines, orange, green, and blue. And these are above the recreational threshold. So these are the values of satellite data for this lake, that 7-day time period. And this presents the maximum value and some other statistics depending on what you're interested in looking in. When you cover over any of the lines in the graph, there's going to be a pop-up box. And that's going to tell you the data that you're looking at and also the numeric values for these lines. And again, if you want to save this data, you can download it as well. On the bottom here is the pixel count graph, and that shows how many pixels were detected to provide the values in the graph above. So again, the pixel represents one geographic unit of area, and the more pixels you have generally, the more confidence you have in that data. So in here, this case, that pop-up tells you on January 15th, there was 50 pixels on that lake, so there's strong confidence. Next slide. All right, so this looks just about exactly the same, except on the top graph, on the vertical axis, it says chlorophyll A and its units, and it has some different benchmark thresholds. This is representing that chlorophyll pigment information that can be represent aquatic plants, algae, and cyanobacteria. These thresholds that are marked here show the value associated with how eutrophic a water body may be. And for those of you who are less familiar with the term eutrophication, it refers to a waterway having a high load of nutrients, which can cause aquatic vegetation growth. It can also harm fish by causing low oxygen levels and just deteriorate the water quality in general. So generally, this term is used to gauge the condition of a waterway. And it's also a good precursor to gauge for potential conditions that can support cyanobacteria blooms. So with these red and yellow dotted lines, this is telling you how eutrophic it is. The lower one is actually telling you it is suffering from eutrophication, and then a worse condition up above. And as you can see here, these colored lines are bouncing between these two thresholds, showing that the conditions for the lake are degraded, which is likely providing conditions for harmful algal bloom to occur. Next slide. All right. I realize that was a lot of information to take in regarding our remote sensing tool, but we're always happy to give one-on-one demonstrations. So if that's of interest, please don't hesitate to reach out. We've really been excited to integrate these tools into how we address and evaluate HABs across the state, and really look forward to seeing how others are also using these tools to address their needs and their monitoring questions. And before we move on from the topic of satellites, I have one more HAB-centered application we recently developed that we want to share with you. And the previous tool I just went over is really great for screening. And it uses a screening tool to trigger when you should go out and investigate a water body further. But if you want to learn more about its status and trends, again, this is some key monitoring questions that Carly had gone over. This second application is a really great resource and was recently published. Next. All right, so this is the second app. This is depicting the home screen. I'm going to go over some features of this application. And this data that's presenting is all based on the cyanobacteria index data set that we went over and the same satellite imagery. It's just not updated as frequently, so it's not presenting daily data, rather it's updated 2 to 3 times per year. And so it's used more for monitoring design. So this has a section to help new users get started in the bottom with detailed instructions on how to navigate. And then in the middle of the screen, you can dive right in and look into regional specific data or individual water body data. So basically, regional is zooming out in the landscape, and looking at just the water body, you're zooming into the information that's available. And also across the top, there's a toolbar that helps you go through the same materials. And you're probably wondering what kind of information this can answer, particularly for these status and trends analyses over this particular area of interest that you might have. So out here on the left, we've listed out the different metrics that are answered to help gauge what kind of information is available. So first off, this list includes bloom frequency. So how often a bloom is occurring, then bloom occurrence, which measures if a bloom is detectable or not. The spatial extent represents how much of the waterway is impacted, and the bloom magnitude tells you how elevated the bloom density is that's being detected. Next slide. If you were to click here then on the regional tab, you're going to see this kind of screen here. And on the left vertical panel, you'll see what data is available catered to your search. And so you can select what regions and different details that you're interested in, particularly if you're interested in the ecoregion or county, and then narrow down your results. And once you're finished, you can click submit, and all the information on the right will populate, including the plots, a map, and narratives that helps go over what the plots are speaking to. And you may notice here also that there's some options to look at different densities of bloom detection. Bloom alert is corresponding to that bloom threshold we went over previously, the recreational alert. And bloom detection is the lowest level detectable, so it's a little bit more conservative if you're interested in that. And you may be wondering what regional data is useful for, and that's helpful for understanding the changing conditions on a larger scale. Next slide. So while still looking here at the regional data, you can also select different metrics here to look at the different time ranges. It presents individual years and also back to 5 years as well. And you can look at the geography tab as well, where it compares your selection to additional timeframes and even, for example, like long-term averages. Next slide. All right, so we just went over how to navigate through the regional data. What about if you want to look at specific waterways? So this is really common, something that we use often. And the navigation to that and on this page looks just like the regional tab, except on the left side, there is a selection to select one waterway at a time. So once you click that waterway and click submit button, the rest of the page will update and give you that information. And again, you can download anything you want here, including those plots and the maps that you've selected. Additionally, for looking at the water body data, there's an additional tab on the far right after the different metrics of status and trends, right? Frequency, occurrence, so forth. You can click on water body ranking, and that helps the user understand how that water body is doing compared to other waterways of interest. Really helps you prioritize actions to help prevent further degradation by seeing how it's performing compared to others. Next. There's also an additional set of information providing some environmental data to further support your analysis. Particularly, this has some precipitation data and air temperature data across the state that will help you compare to and understand maybe some potential environmental drivers of HABs. Okay, so Next slide. I realize that we've gone over a lot of information and it's a lot to take in. And I want to reiterate again that we're eager to go over our remote sensing tools with you. So please reach out if you have interest and we can go over some of this information one-on-one and help you understand what's available to inform your monitoring designs. Further, there's one additional satellite imagery tool provided by the federal US EPA, and this presents forecasts of potential cyanobacteria blooms in a few less lakes than our previous tools, but if you have a waterway of interest, I recommend taking a look at it. It provides the percentage chance of a HAB occurring for that week, and it depicts it by large circles over that lake and a darker color, meaning there's a higher percentage chance. All right, next slide. Now we just have a few additional data tools we want to give brief introductions to. And again, these are available as reference cards to help you once you're doing your monitoring design as references. So here's the Eco Atlas tool. It's really valuable to determine the locations of water resources across our vast landscape here in California. I personally use this tool often, particularly because it provides the most comprehensive mapping of blue lines or the water resources within our state boundaries. And it's much more comprehensive of the water resources maps than many federal managed maps. It's based off of how they define water resources in policy. And so this tool also provides precious inventory of wetlands and ephemeral streams. It also provides some conditional assessments and also information on local habitat restoration projects, if that's of interest. Next. For coastal water surveillance, this is a really valuable tool that we use as well from the FHAB map program. And this provides information on water quality and also if there's a potential marine bloom and its condition along the California coast. There are several set stations here depicted on the map on the right with these yellow dots. These represent the stations that have data that's being reported. This is routinely provided data approximately weekly. And it helps you understand the timing and trends of these coastal blooms, not necessarily cyanobacteria blooms. So again, coastal blooms. Oftentimes, these are red tides. And they also have a lot of historic data in this tool going back to 2005 in some of the stations. Definitely a helpful tool if that's of interest. Next up is the US EPA's How's My Waterway tool. And this is a comprehensive data dashboard that allows you to access water quality data from many different federal databases all in like one portal. This also provides data on groundwater quality. So that's something of note as well, because our other tools have all been focused on the surface waters. This also has data from the Water Exchange database, or WQX. So that's something that you can view as well here. And much of the data is offered as synthesized to inform if a waterway that you've zoomed in on, how it's, what its condition is, and if it's impaired for some particular uses like fishing, drinking water, aquatic life, and it also has historical trends of these conditions as well. So that comes to the end of my part of these data tools kind of presentation. I'm going to hand this over to Anna to go over the tribal data mapping tool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. So just real briefly, all of those tools were great, but they focus on, one type of data set, water quality, HAB, something like that. Myself and our tribal partners and a whole crew of interns and fellows in our office have been working on developing what we're now calling the tribal data mapping tool. I've given presentations on this tool at the federal USCPA Tribal Conference the past couple of years. And during those presentations, we referred to it as the Tribal Water Data Map. We've rebranded to make it more approachable. Anyway, we've been working with our tribal partners to create this map because our partners said, we kind of want to see a whole bunch of different data sets all at once, but we don't want to have to pay for contractors or anyone to synthesize them. Y'all have a lot of data out there, but it's in so many different places. So can we put the important stuff, the stuff that's important to tribes, in one spot? And so this tool is continuously being updated with more data sets and tools and resources. And the purpose is to make it easier for y'all to find the data that you need quickly. And so all the data that's in it is publicly available data. There's no tribal data, meaning there's no like environmental data that was collected by tribes in the map. Yet, if you want to add your data, we can talk about that. But for now, it's a curation of data sets. So it's got a lot in there. And we've got some example questions that folks might have and the different map layers that might be useful in answering that type of question. So we've got lots of, tribal land, federally recognized tribal land layers, geopolitical boundaries. So, regional water boards, I think we might have counties and things like that. In terms of assessing if water quality is impaired, we utilize our California Integrated Report, which does an assessment of water quality every 2 years. And so the most recent integrated report data is on the map to see if a water body is protecting a certain beneficial use or not. And then we've got a lot of other environmental data. So some pollution indicators, hydrology layers. So if you're looking at, different hydrologic units, CalEnviroscreen, that one's helpful. And we've added it because tribes wanted to see it to help them with their grant writing. So thinking about like, okay, CalEnviroscreen said this area has a very high pollution burden. And therefore it should be prioritized to receive a grant. That sort of kind of thinking has been used by tribal folks that use this tool in CalEnviroscreen. There's like mining data sets, state parks, all sorts of stuff in there. So I would recommend checking out our layer guide in the user manual. So if you go back, there's a link to the user manual here. And that user manual walks through all the layers that are in the map and kind of explains what that layer tells you, where we got it from, how frequently it's updated to kind of orient yourself to what's available. I honestly look at the user manual a lot because when you open the map and you've got all those data there, it can be really overwhelming. So I like to think about what I want to look at, check it out in the user manual, and then see where I can find it in the map, if that makes sense. Another thing I'll note here really briefly before we move to break. So there's the links on the bottom here to our user manual, the map itself. But then we also keep track of the different requests that we receive from tribes in spaces like this, or as if you email me directly. And we keep a project management board. So we add all those requests to this board, which is publicly facing. So you can check out what we're working on, what's on our list, what's coming up next, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And coming up next, we're working on adding our own surface swamp data. We're starting with water quality data, but eventually we'll be adding, FHAB data and all those other things there. So you'll be able to see all of that at once. That is a lot of different types of data, but we might be missing something. So if there's something else that you want to see added to this map to make your jobs easier when it comes to developing your monitoring plans or just understanding water quality near you, please let us know. We want to make sure this tool is useful and used by our tribal government partners and others. That was a lot of very detailed information. Again, these slides will be shared via email, maybe today if I can process the recording and get them out to you, but definitely in the next week or so you'll have access to them to look back about things. But are there any questions about anything that Carly, Marissa, or I covered so far?
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much for having this event and everything. I kind of been looking at the satellite imagery stuff, but I haven't been able to get like really useful data because our stream
Mm.
water is so low. So I'm thinking I'm kind of approaching it with a maybe drones or something. Would you guys happen to know what like sensors we'll need to kind of monitor for HABs and stuff like that?
Great question. I have
Yeah.
no idea. I'm just stalling time for Marissa and Carly. Marissa, what do you got?
Hey there. Yeah, yeah, we hear you. With these narrower waterways, right, for streams or satellite imagery, is it useful to look at your specific locations? One way it could be helpful is understanding what's happening in that watershed, particularly what's happening upstream that might be then influencing any, HAB conditions or deteriorating water quality at your sites. So, like regional scale could be useful, but then again, depends on your question that you have. But for drones specifically, it's not something that we have been using ourselves in our program, but we are familiar with some other entities that do use drones to get in, below that tree canopy and really assess what's going on, especially for many stream miles. We can get you into contact with the leader of one of the CCAD network subcommittees on where they're actually looking into standardizing the process using drones for surveillance of streams. So we can follow up with you individually and give you that information.
We can also add it to the backup slides as well,
Right.
like the drone contact information. So, because I'm
Yeah.
sure, Oscar, you're not the only one looking at drones. Do we know
Yeah.
anything just like off the top of our heads about like the types of sensors that we
Right.
might put onto a drone to help with
Yeah.
HAB? Like, are there chlorophyll sensors or things like that?
Right. Yeah. So there's some folks just take photos, but then it is really cool to have the onboard sensor that can pick up that color reflectance, just like what satellite imagery or satellites have. These sensors are available on the ground for much less cost and can be attached to a drone. They are lightweight and can really give you like that magnitude of what you're seeing for particularly chlorophyll A. So those sensors are available to put on drones. Just for that specific information, I defer you to that other work group where they can give you some specifics. And I'll just take us a moment. We'll plug it into the slide deck and provide it to you.
Mhm. And
Carly,
Oscar,
do
just to highlight, oh yeah, just to highlight as well, like Region 1 has not used drones, but helicopters to look at some of their rivers, and they're not actually using any sensors. They're just like taking like video because you can actually, if the water is clear enough, you can see the maps pretty clearly, and they're doing percent, they've done like percent coverage assessments. So um, I just know that those, like once you start adding those sensors on, it can get pretty expensive. So just to highlight that you can kind of do it low budget as well.
And then
Yeah,
we've
thank you.
got other experts in the room. Has anyone else used drone sensors that has recommendations for Oscar and team?
This is Dave Karen. Yeah, we've used a couple of drones, and we've used one on Clear Lake, and I've used just a visual, not any special sensors, but just videoing, and they're very powerful for giving you a feel for where things are a problem. If you've got a large body of water, you can localize where some of the issues are. On tribal lands, it's probably easier to do than it is on a lot of public waterways because of all the issues with flying a drone. Literally, people will shoot them out of the sky, but they can be very useful for giving you a first glance of where your problems might be, and then using that information to tackle your monitoring plan.
Thanks.
And I think Marissa hit it. Or Carly, all of these sensors that you've got on more sophisticated instruments like satellites can be done. It determines the size of the drone that you will need. I mean, I've used ones that are not bigger than your hand, up to things that are these big quad, drones, which can be quite expensive, but are worth it if you're going to use them.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Great question. Any other questions? Okay, great. I'm gonna update this slide. Let's take a 10-minute break to absorb all the information, and then we can dive into more information about quality assurance and data management. Does a 10-minute break sound good for folks? Can you give me a reaction? Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording. We'll see you back here at 10:20. All right, welcome back from your short but hopefully sweet break. We've gone over a lot this morning already. We're in the home stretch, but next up, we've said a couple of times, we're going to pass it off to our colleague Tessa in Swamp IQ. I'll let her talk about what that acronym means because I can never remember, even though I should know it. But we're going to talk a little bit about data quality and data management to support developing your data, your monitoring plans, and then making sure you get the quality data you need to answer your questions. So with that, Tessa, please take it away.
Hi. Thank you, Anna, and everyone for joining today. So I am Tessa Foget, and I am also part of our surface water ambient monitoring program. I cover the quality assurance and data management unit of that program, and we are going to talk about data quality and data management. So writing a plan. Your goal in writing a plan is really to document the monitoring design elements and all the procedures that your team members will follow. And the size and complexity of your project will be reflected in your plan. So if you've got a smaller project, maybe you're just going out to 3 sites to, do visual observations. You still would like to document something about that in a plan, but that's going to be a shorter, simpler plan than if you're planning, a multi-year ambient monitoring program where you're going to go to multiple water bodies or something. So if you have a bigger, longer project, it's going to be a longer, more complex plan. So we're going to talk about some terminology just to, at least for this purpose, get on the same page. So there's a quality assurance project plan, which those of us who talk about those a lot often just refer to as a QAP. So that is a project-specific plan designed to provide the type and quality of data required to answer questions posed by the project. So you document all this stuff about like what are your questions and then how are you going to collect the data that could help you answer those questions. And these can cover up to a 3-year period. So if some people have ongoing monitoring programs, and so they would update those every 3 years. And this quality assurance project plan, this is like a term from US EPA. So anybody who has done a project where they received funding from US EPA may have been required to do this. There's some other terms people use sometimes, and at least this is how we in our world use these terms. So monitoring plan, that may be an addendum to your QAP to update your sampling sites or specific details each year. So your QAP may cover a longer time period or describe the project overall, but maybe each year you look at what you did last year and then may adjust what you're going to do this year in terms of exactly where or when you're going, and that you would document in a monitoring plan. And then there's another term you may have heard called a sampling and analysis plan. And that is usually a shorter plan intended for like a one-time or limited time sampling event. So, that could be the shorter plan if you're just doing a smaller sort of project. Writing a plan. So the plan can be simple and straightforward. We in our swamp program, we have like a 15, 20-year history and it's statewide and we do multiple types of monitoring. So our WAP is like 150 pages. Yours doesn't have to be. So it should be specific to your project. It should really describe what you're doing. And the thing that I often come back to is think of your future self, like you 2 or 3 years from now, and you're looking back at some things you did a few years ago, like what would you be happy to have documented in this plan? Because you probably won't remember it, just because most of us don't remember details. Um, so, put those details in your document so that you or, future staff or future people can look back and be like, oh, this is where they went. This is what they did. This is why they made these choices. So, we do have a resource that is posted on our like water board's quality assurance webpage that is called the QAPS Made Easy workbook. And so it's something our group put together a few years ago. And it's sort of like a fillable form that kind of walks you through questions to get to all those QAP elements. Um, and those are often, those US EPA requirements if you're doing some sort of a project that has funding from them. So it's tries to when you just if you ever looked at like the US EPA QAP guidance, it's just like lots of text and it feels a little overwhelming and you're like, why do I have to do all this? I know what I want to go out and monitor. So this workbook is intended to kind of break it down into more plain language questions to just like help you um, in how most of us maybe start thinking about these projects and get you through it and document all those pieces. So we kind of break it down into different parts where you have your systematic planning, your quality assurance plan. You're going to then implement the study, assess your data that you collected, and then that, what you learn from that, you put into your plan for next time. So data quality, there's a term, again, all from US EPA called data quality objectives. And it's basically the who, what, where, when, and why of your project. So we talk about, so that's how we try to break it down into these questions, like in this workbook. So what is your project going to study? How are the data going to be used? What data and information are needed? What are the limits of the study? How will decisions be made based on what data you collect? And how much error is acceptable to you in those data? Um, so I think a question maybe for some people who don't have maybe the like as much experience with like lab analyses or getting sort of looking at the data and deciding like how do I know if this data is good enough for me to use is how do you ensure the quality of your data? So you want to think through how you want to use the data and then what quality of data do you need for that use? And then you're going to think of, make a plan for how you can collect that type of data. Even that might sound confusing for people. 'Cause you're like, I don't know, what quality of data do I need? So we do have, there's a lot of resources out there for things like lab analyses, but just sort of in terms of even like collecting your field samples, the way you do that, the way you guarantee your quality of data for that is use a standardized procedure and then make sure that people are trained on that procedure and doing it consistently and, make sure people are following the plan and that you're sort of holding people accountable that they're doing things correctly. So it doesn't have to be this like really technical, not every part of it is like a really technical, esoteric sort of thing. So it's just sort of like having a consistent plan, making sure people know how to follow it and making sure they do follow it. So just sort of breaking it down is the yellow box is develop and document a plan, train your team on the plan, and then follow the plan. Um, so there are, if you're submitting samples to a lab for analysis, then there are some more, like technical details of like how they run their instrument and making sure there's quality control data and how to assess that. But sort of big picture is just like doing things consistently and documenting them. So how do you assess the quality of your lab data? Um, so partly it's going to be a starting with what lab do you choose to analyze data? For FHABs, a lot of the data you're going to collect, you're not even like, depending on how you choose to do your study, it may not even involve lab samples because we talked about there's, just visual inspections, or maybe microscopy that, maybe you're doing at an internal lab at your, in your organization. Um, so this is going to depend on if you're doing one of those like higher resourced studies, if you're even using a lab for like HABs data. But if you are going down that route, this is just some guidance for that. So just choosing a lab that really has a documented data quality system. So for some things, there is a lab accreditation system and making sure they have that certification, that there's not as much of that specific for harmful algal bloom, like cyanotoxin data. But a lab that has, a record of documenting their own system, basically. So, and then having quality control samples. So the point of quality control samples is a way to assess various data quality indicators. And then you compare the results from those samples to acceptance criteria that you set up ahead of time. And you'll want to make sure you discuss any of those requirements you want for your project with the lab before you submit your samples. So sort of developing a little relationship with the lab, maybe you have to set up a contract or, you have to learn about their submit, how they accept samples. So having those conversations to make sure you're going to get what you are expecting and what you need for your project. So for earlier, Carly talked about, a low resource project. You might just be doing visual inspections or microscopy. A medium, you might be doing like qPCR or metabarcoding to look at the genes or taxon, uh, biodiversity. And then for a more high resource project, you might actually be analyzing for cyanotoxins themselves. So for that higher resource project where you're actually collecting water samples or some kind of sample to submit for toxin analysis, our program does have quality control, like acceptance criteria and what quality control samples we think, are required for our program. We have that all documented. So that is definitely something, if you're going that route, you could at least look at what we have for our program and decide if that's right for you. You can use it exactly, or you can take what pieces work for you and change what doesn't. And then we even have that divided because there's different kinds of analyses people do. There's ELISA assays, and then there's also chemistry like LCMS/MS. So you don't need to know what those terms mean at this moment, but if they are meaningful to you, we have some documents that lay out what those quality objectives should be for those for our program that you could look at. I will say for the qPCR and metabarcoding, Swamp is currently working on laying out QC acceptance criteria and QC requirements for those. So that should be hopefully coming in hopefully by the end of 2026. Just so if you are looking for guidance or standards that other people are following, those will be available in the near future for those, which may be more commonly done because they cost less money. Um, so moving on to data management. Um, Thinking about data management, we have record keeping. So you may have like field sheets that you fill out. part of, having a consistent plan would be having a standard field sheet that you use for your whole project, um, that you kind of observe, maybe you're observing things and, how you are documenting your observations. If you are submitting samples to a lab, you may have chain of custody forms. So that's like how you document like where this sample came from, what it is, and what you want to analyze for that you submit to a lab. And then eventually, if you are submitting to a lab, you will have your lab results. You may have like a lab report, and then you also may have like a spreadsheet of data, which is often called an EDD, electronic data deliverable. Um, so so those are all things you would want to keep for a certain amount of time as documentation of your project and what happened in your project. And then, that's sort of how you first document your data or it comes to you. And then sometimes people want to get their data in a database. And so you may have your own internal database, or perhaps you have to submit it to like the EPA, like their WQX system, um, or some other database that you may be working with. So then you're doing data entry from, your field sheet, or maybe you have an electronic field sheet and it is sort of automated, or you may be manually entering that. And then your lab results, ideally your lab could provide you that in a format that works for your database, but if not, sort of transforming that. Um, and then data review is the next step where um, if you have lab analyses and acceptance criteria for your quality control samples, you would compare those and see if they, for example, like a lab blank, you run just blank water and you, of course, want there to be nothing in it. So as long as that's like a non-detect, that would probably meet your acceptance criteria. But if there's any detection of the toxins you're looking for, you'd say like, uh-oh, there is contamination at the lab, and so now we're not sure if we can trust these results. So that's sort of the verification step of like, okay, we set up these criteria. A blank should have nothing in it, and if it has something in it, then that changes how we look at this data, for example. And then thinking about storage of the data, so for long-term record keeping, and then also how do you want people to access the data? Like, here at the water boards, we are a public agency, so of course we want public access to our data, so we make sure it goes into our public accessible databases, but your tribe may have different needs and purposes for data access. Um, So in your plan, you're going to want to describe all of those data management steps and just I guess I like to think about it as like a path of your data. We also talk about it as a data life cycle, but you want to describe that whole path or cycle. So how are your data recorded, reviewed, and then stored? And then if you're doing data processing or compiling or analysis, so um, sort of this little visual. You collect your yucky, blucky green water samples. um, and maybe you're sending those to a lab, or maybe you're taking that and looking at it in a microscope. And then you're generating data, probably in a spreadsheet format of some sort. Maybe you're putting that in a database. And then are you going to write a summary report about it? Are you going to post that online? Do you have a long-term storage plan? Just writing down all of those steps. Um, Even though I feel like often a lot of these steps feel obvious. You're like, well, of course, we're saving it on our, you know, shared drive, our whatever, our cloud storage place for our organization. But um, again, thinking of future you or future staff when you're maybe not working there anymore, how would they know where to look and where to find things and what you did in this? So here's one example of just kind of walking through a data path for your field data. So you may, so field results, I kind of think of as like if you have a probe that you take out into the field to measure temperature, dissolved oxygen, that type of stuff. So like actual measurements you're taking out in the field, and then of course also observations. So a lot of people talk about, record something about the weather or, even your air temperature, or if they're, if for blooms, you may be reporting what the bloom looks like. You may be recording observations about that. So you would record those either on your paper or electronic field sheet. And then you're going to have your field staff maybe enter that into an electronic format if it's not already. Have maybe certain staff designated to review those field sheets for errors, especially, if there is an extra data entry step. Then your field data files are stored in a specific place. Maybe it's your computer, a local drive or cloud, or, is there a recovery or backup available? And then maybe you have an internal database you load that to or something external. So just all of those steps, writing those down in your plan. And then similar for lab results, if you are submitting it for maybe gene or toxin analysis, um, you would, you're going to write, you want to say which lab you're using, that you are using a COC, and maybe even in your plans, show an example of the COC with the chain of custody form. You would want to, the actual chain of custody form you fill out, you could save a copy of that, so you keep those in your records, because I don't know, in our program, they're often, sometimes the lab doesn't enter something correctly in what they send back to you. Maybe they got a location wrong or something about the ID wrong. So it's nice for you to have your own copy and be able to cross-check. And then, the lab is going to send you the results in some format, maybe just in like a PDF lab report, maybe in an Excel format. And sometimes you may have a specified format that you want from the lab. So you want to, document that somewhere. And then where are you storing those lab reports or those spreadsheets? So then you would have someone potentially review the data to say, like, did they meet our contractual requirements or whatever we agreed to when we submitted the sample? Did they actually, if we required quality control samples, did they run them? And did they meet our acceptance criteria? And then, we require data to be submitted in our specific database format. So I don't, if that's part of your process, then you would also want to check that they did that correctly. And then maybe you have a specific staff that's loading that to your database or to submitting that to an external database. So it's good to document the specific staff or at least their role, that like position or role, so that it's clear of like who's doing this and who would we ask about it in a few years if we had questions. So that's all I really had. I just sort of kept it high level, but we are definitely, open and available if people have questions on any specific part of quality assurance or data management.
And one thing that I like to share too is if you see something in one of our quality assurance plans, monitoring plans that you want to use, let us know. Like if the copy paste situation is a struggle, please let us know and we can give you those sections that you're looking for so it's easier for you to integrate things into your documents. We've Tessa has spent a lot of time writing these documents. It could be a pain in the butt. So if we can, lower that burden for you, please let us know and we'd love to help you reuse and remix whatever we have to get you going.
Yeah, and I guess just pointing out too, I think Marissa and Carly already pointed out that we have, like, they have developed a lot of guidance or protocols or various pieces of monitoring. And so, of course, we want people to use them if they're helpful and, sort of just finding the resources of, people may have already documented SOPs or things that you could use in your own programs.
Mhm. And then since I'm not seeing any questions come up in the chat, I'm not seeing anyone unmute, just punting to Marissa and Carly, are there any other monitoring plan, QAPI, HABI tips that you would like to share with our audience that come top of mind for you? When I think about quality assurance plans, and as someone who managed a statewide program for fish tissue, when I started, I'm not an expert in that. I was like learning how to do the things. So even though writing the QAPs can be a pain in the butt, it's really helpful for new folks, particularly as you're trying to grow your programs, expand capacity to be able to hand someone a document and say, read this first, and then let's talk about questions and things like that, because a lot of essential information is already captured. But any other hot tips we have for folks, Carly, Marissa?
Well, I was just going to give a primer for our next training, actually. So, like, with the QAF, you have to have a lot of the documentation notes about like how you're doing the monitoring. And I know we haven't gone into that in detail yet, but that's coming in course 5. So we're going to be going over different monitoring methodologies and different sampling types. And those are things that can be easily borrowed. They're also all available on our FHAB portal, so you could access them at any point if you want to and start diving in and amending it for your needs. But I would say like the have realm is still sort of an exploratory realm. So there's not a ton of like concrete things of like, this is the best way to do it. So it's a little less streamlined than other processes. So like we welcome an open dialogue as you kind of navigate this new territory, because we're still navigating it as well and doing a lot of research. Like we just updated our benthic sampling methodology last year based on newer science because we realized what we were doing wasn't thorough enough. So we're happy to have those conversations of like lessons learned and as well as, sharing anything that we have that may help guide you in some of these processes.
Yeah, and I'll just add, because things are still developing in the world of HABs, that's actually a great reason to make sure you're documenting what did you do in 2026 and now 2028 you've learned like, oh, that was probably making our data biased low, or like maybe we were missing things, or because we are still learning how to do things. So having that, the details of what you did documented can really help you when you're looking back in a few years.
Great. Any questions from folks? Okay. Oh, some. Oh, so at the next, I'm reading something that Marissa added to the chat, but at the next training series in May, we're going to go into the sampling procedures and lab analysis methods that are available. So Carly kind of gave a high level view of the types of sampling methods that you might want to think about for low, medium, and high resource. We're going to go into nitty gritty detail about what it takes to use those methods. So if you'd like to take an early look into documentation, that's currently available on the FHAB monitoring resources page, the FHAB wiki. And we have a link to that I will add to the slides. Our our tribal instructor hasn't arrived yet. So I'm actually, since we're talking about resources, I'm just going to go through some resources that we have that can hopefully help support your work and like talk back to things that we've already discussed today. So the first are some other example QAPs that weren't developed by SWAMP. They were developed by US EPA, the East Coast region, and Washington State, but just another way that folks are thinking about writing their monitoring designs, their monitoring plans with a FHAB focus. So this green text is a link to these documents. So you'll be able to have access to those if you want to check out what those different folks are doing to inspire your monitoring plans. And then this is the infamous FHAB wiki. There's a link here at the bottom of this slide. And this is where you can find all of our monitoring resources. So things from, training videos for specific methods to, we've talked about SOPs or standard operating procedures for, doing site reconnaissance, among other things. We'll talk about the planning documents, supply checklists, and things like that. We'll talk about the next training, but all of those resources are here, as well as contact information for Marissa and Carly and others. So we also like to note that, if you or your team are going through these and be like, well, we kind of just want a little bit of training from Marissa and Carly, in person or remotely, just for us. We want to talk about our needs, our plans, and then get guidance or recommendations from Marissa and Carly. We're open to doing that, particularly to support our tribal government partners. So drop us a line and we can schedule something, set something up. We have received a request since the start of this training series, and I think y'all did the training yesterday, today. It's happening soon, but we do try and respond, as quickly as we can and accommodate the requests of whoever requested it. So please take us up on that offer. I'll go through this in a second, but while Tessa was talking, Marissa, Carly, and I in the background put together the material on drones. So here are some links that Marissa alluded to. So the FHAB, the California Cyanobacterial and Harmful Algal Bloom Network. Oh my gosh, did I say that correctly? Y'all. Okay. Gold star for me on remembering an acronym. Anyway, the FHAB network has a subcommittee all about drones and aerial monitoring, and there's a little bit of a blurb on what that subcommittee is all about and links to the subcommittee leads. So the first link is just to the subcommittee page, which has this information. And then Jamie and Allie, these are their emails. And then there's some other resources that, Marissa, if you want to talk about these last two links.
I can talk to, I see them in there. Yeah. These are just some papers that came out that, because this is all being tested too with drones. It's not widely applied. It's been welcomed and accepted among the community, but there's been some challenges. So these are just some resources to kind of peruse so you have a little bit more background before you take off on this endeavor so you can kind of plan ahead as to some of the challenges that you may encounter, as well as some of the benefits of actually including it as some complementary data. So just some extra stuff.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Tessa early on mentioned, picking a lab is a whole thing. And so I asked Marissa and Carly in the chat to share, we have a CyanoHAB's laboratory list. We aren't expressing any preference or encouraging anyone to necessarily use these labs, but we are aware of these labs that do something with cyanobacterial harmful algal bloom analysis. And so this list is 5 pages. This is a screenshot of our first page. And you can see it has the laboratory information, the matrix, meaning what the sample is in, water or soil or tissue, things like that. Which cyanotoxin they can analyze for, the method that they use, and then what's MDL? I can't remember what the...
Yeah, it has to do with the detection levels of the individual methods. It helps gauge the capabilities the lab has, particularly say if you're interested in drinking water testing. So that's to inform what might be at a submerged intake in your lake, or even nearby groundwater of a lake. that might be having a FHAB, and it can tell you if it goes the method can detect the toxin at a low enough concentration so it's meaningful to the health action level. And
So,
for the most
so
part,
the acronym
these
is it's
are
minimum
available.
detectable limit or something like that.
That's right.
Method
Yes.
detection limit. Yeah.
Oh,
Method
thanks.
detection limit.
Help me out with RL too, Tessa, since you're
Reporting limit.
great. Why do we care about that?
It's how sensitive the method is. So it's like, because some of these are toxic at such low levels, you want to know, can it even detect near that level or ideally below it? So you're like, maybe it's approaching, but it's not above the toxic level yet, or like, so if your method is insensitive, it's like you could have toxins there, but you're not seeing it because your method just isn't sensitive enough to detect it.
Got it. Thank you. See, this is why I keep smart people around, y'all. And then we've got the response time and like sample storage and shipping conditions that folks should be aware of. So check out that list if you're interested in exploring analyzing samples for HABs in some way, and hopefully it's helpful. And then this is just, thank you, MDL is method detection limit. This is another, oh, did we talk about this? No, this is just another tool that exists in the world. We kind of went hard and fast with on the different tools earlier, but this is another one, and there's links to it if you want to check it out for, again, marine algal blooms in California. Okay, let's see. Okay, so like I said, we were really hoping to hear from our partner at Shingle Springs, the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians, to share about their monitoring program. They do, I know this person well, they do a lot of awesome work on HABs and other things. So life be life in today, and they haven't joined us yet, and that's okay. We will work with them to see if we can get them to join us for a future training, and maybe later this year. I know it's a busy time right now for a lot of folks. HABs are happening, so maybe this person's in the field, right? That happens. So we'll circle back and try and hear more from Zach and team at Shingle Springs, and we'll get back to you on that at the future training. And then finally, before we close, we're closing early, which again, I don't think, does anyone get mad about that? Like Carly went over when we opened today, we've already done a couple of, or a few really great courses. And so in January, February, and March, there's the course name, a link to the recording, and the slides for those are already available. Today's training, I'll try and get the recording and slides posted by May 5th. If I can get it to you all sooner, I will, but definitely by May 5th, they'll be up. And as usual, I will send an email to anyone who registered for this training. So you'll get a link to the slides and the recording first, and then we'll tell people through the CC Network email list and the Tribal Matters email list as well. And then like we've mentioned, we have another training scheduled for May 27th, where we'll be talking about harmful algal bloom sample collection methods, protocols, and processing. So Marissa and Carly are going to go and do a deep dive of sampling methods. We'll also hear from our San Luis Rey Indian Water Authority folks, who it's a tribally led lab that supports tribes and does HAB analysis. So they're going to talk about the cool things that they do at their lab and some things to consider when you submit your data to a lab for analysis. And then we're going to take a break because hopefully y'all are in the field doing cool things, monitoring maybe for HABs, responding to HABs. So we're going to take a break and then we'll come back towards the end of the year to really think about, okay, you've done your monitoring, you've collected your data, you have it back from the lab or from, your field staff. Now what? How do we analyze it? How do we interpret it? So we'll talk a little bit about how we do that at Swamp for our FHAB program. And then we'll also hear about a bunch of different mitigation, research, and case studies. So that'll probably be more of like a panel style training because there's a lot of cool work happening around the state. All right. Last call for questions. Okay. Well, thanks again for joining us all. Again, another small but mighty crew. We really hope these trainings are helpful for you. And, please share links, spread the word to your teams, your colleagues, and reach out to us. Carly and Marissa can be reached by this General Cyanohab Reports email, or you can reach out to me directly and I'll track them down for you. Take good care out, y'all, and we hope to see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.